Hey, what's up? John Sonmez from SimpleProgrammer.com. That is just amazing. Every time I say that, like Cortana thinks that it's time to turn on my Surface Pad. So this is weird. But anyway, I have a question I'm going to answer here. But before I do, I got a request here for someone has requested that I say, all right, all right, all right. Let's see if I can do one better. How about instead of just saying all right, all right, all right, how about this? How about let's see, how does it go here? Your only job is to put meat on the table. Name of the game? Move the money from your client's pocket into your pocket. All right, that's enough of that. Anyway, some people will get that, some people won't get that. Anyway, so I got this email. This is an old one. Okay, if you send me emails, by the way, right, I get a lot of emails, so it might be some time before I answer video or enter your email via video. Hopefully I'll send you an email that says that I'm playing on it. But anyway, I queue them up, and there's a lot to it. So I don't want you to think I'm ignoring you. If you got an email from me, and I said I'm going to do video, I probably will. Like there's a 90% chance that I will. So anyway, this email is from Brian, and he says, thanks for the advice to specialize and develop the ability to charge high rates. I've heard this advice before from several sources, and I know that it's sound advice. Cool. So I've noticed that many people who specialize and charge high rates end up leaving contracting consulting work to work on a product instead. For example, Patrick McKenzie, Ramit Sethi, Chase Jarvis, yourself, as you mentioned in Do You Really Bill $300 an Hour? And you can check out that video. Hopefully there'll be a link to it right there. Let's see how cool that is, a link to that video. Anyway, so here's my question. Wouldn't it be better advice to simply skip the consulting stage and work on starting a product business? Thanks, Brian. Okay, so this is a good question. So Brian refers to a lot of people that start out doing consulting. So I've actually got a blog post, which hopefully maybe I can get a link to that as well right here. See how this magic works. And the blog post is basically called The 4 Levels of Developer Freedom, something like that. Anyway, in that blog post, I talk about these 4 levels. I talk about like level 1 of freedom is you're working for someone else, right? You've got a boss, and your boss dictates what you do. You come into the office. You don't really have much freedom, right? And your pay is kind of capped there, right? Level 2 is you're a freelancer. Now, most people aspire to become a freelancer or consultant, and they think that they're free. They own their own software company. That's not quite true, right? So when that happens, you have a lot of bosses. So all the clients that you have are bosses. Now you've got freedom of location and time, right? You can come in and go and work on stuff when you want to. For the most part, you can live where you want to, right? You've got a little bit more autonomy, but you still got to pay the bills, and you still have to trade your time for dollars, right? If you don't work, you don't make money. So it's not quite as free as you want, but it's good, right? And then there's like the 3rd level of freedom, which is you have some kind of product business, right? And this is what Brian's asking here is essentially, he says, should I run a product business instead? And so that at that level of freedom, it's still not the highest level of freedom, right? This is sort of where I kind of bounce between the two. But at this level, you are building a product business, but you're building products that people want based on your audience, right? So you can't do whatever you want to do. You're not totally free because you got to build stuff that people want to buy, right? You can't just like be like, I really like playing with Legos, so I'm gonna just like play with Legos, watch videos of me playing with Legos. Although some people do make money doing that, but regardless. My point is that a product business, is more free. There's a lot more options in there. And now you're not trading time for dollars, right? So you might, and a lot of my business works this way, right? Because I invested in creating a lot of Pluralsight videos and creating the courses that I sell on simpleprogrammer.com. Go check out devcareerboost.com or 10 steps to learn anything, or 10stepstolearn.com for some of my courses. And you can see them in the links below as always. But essentially, I've spent a bunch of time, and now people pay me money, and that money is not connected to that time. All right, same thing. This YouTube video will live on. I'm going to spend some time recording this now, and then I'm going to spend some money having someone edit this, and then boom, it's going to be out there, and maybe it'll make some more money, right, over time. So that's what a product business essentially is. And then the fourth level of freedom is basically where you have so much money that you don't care. You just do what you want, right? You don't worry about money, because at the first three levels, there's still money, right? Hopefully at a product business, you're making enough money, it's disconnected from time that you don't worry about it as much. But you're still not free to work on whatever you want. The fourth level of freedom, and this is where I hover between the third and fourth, is you just work on whatever you want, whatever feels good to you. And this is where people make ridiculous amounts of money because they don't care, because they just start following their, like, I don't want to confuse this with the following your passion, but to some degree they do. It's more they don't give a shit, right? It's not just that they follow their passion. It's just that, and when you stop caring and you just start doing on what interests you, and you just start following your heart, I know, but anyway, when you start doing that, you honestly do sometimes, because you're not trying to make money. You don't care, right? So anyway, so those are I'm sidetracking a little bit here, but I'm going to get back to your question, Brian. But essentially, I wanted to lay that foundation because I want you to understand that you can skip levels to some degree, but it's sort of difficult to do. So, the thing is, like, here's how it kind of comes down. If you're a software developer and you're looking to sort of gain what I call freedom, right? You got to consider what the second level means, and that is not true freedom. And that's why I laid all this groundwork, is because that's part of my answer here, is I want to make sure that you understand that being a freelancer, right, not working for someone, but having clients, that is still closer down, it's still lower on the ladder, right? I mean, you can make a lot of money, don't get me wrong, but there's still a cap to that, right? I'm not going to be able to bill, sure, at some clients I might be able to bill $500 an hour before, I've done that, right? But I'm not going to be able to bill a lot more than that, and I'm not going to be able to fill up that time. There's no way that you're working 40 hours a week and billing that kind of rate, right? So it's capped. So, and you've got some restriction, and if you stop working, you stop making money, right? So you might want to skip that level. I do agree with this, but it's hard because the thing is, right, a lot of my knowledge, a lot of what I can produce and sell in my product business, especially in the info product business, comes from my consulting, my experience doing that. Now, I was a software developer for over 15 years as well as an employee, so I can draw on that as well. But you got to make sure you have enough depth, or that you can actually produce something if you're going to do a product business. And sometimes the consulting income is a nice transition, right? So sometimes it's easier to go from employee to a freelancer or a consultant, right? And then what you could do when you're a freelancer or consultant is you start building this product business on the side, and you start shifting more of your time. So my good buddy Derek Bailey, right, at derekbailey.com, and you can hear us talking about this on entreprogrammers.com every week. But anyway, he basically transitioned, like, from an employee. He's doing consulting. His product business is now 70% of his business, and he's got 30% consulting. At first it was 75% consulting, right? And eventually he'll probably get to 100%. Same thing with probably the other entreprogrammers on entreprogrammers.com. Chuck and Josh has recently quit his job, and he's more in the 100% consulting or 90% consulting. So a lot of people do that, but when you look at that also, I think that it's hard, right? If I were going back and I were saying, all right, how am I going to do this? And then this is really to some degree how I did it, because I didn't ever I didn't ever rely on consulting for my income when I was an entrepreneur, right? I did some years of consulting for like 1 or 2 clients, but I never had to do a lot of freelance consulting and rely on that for my income. I always had the product business as the main thing. So I kind of like that approach better, because I'd rather go and get straight into the product business. Because the consulting, here's the thing about the consulting, it becomes difficult to get away from it, because 1, it's a large amount of income, 2, it's a large time sink, it doesn't give you enough time to work on your product. So I'd rather, and plus a lot of times you gotta go and you gotta get prospects, and that's somewhat difficult. So, and you're still running a business right on top of that. So I would rather advise to, have that kind of, I don't want to say cush job, but your regular job, right? And you're working for someone and you work just the 8 hours a day, right? You try to minimize that, and you spend like an extra 2 or 3 hours a day building your product business on the side. And then when you transition, you can full-time transition over. And you've got to be ready to take a pay cut. It'd be worth it. But then you can skip that consulting step and never get into that trap, because a lot of people get stuck in this trap, right? Because consulting can be, if you get good at it, right, it can be extremely lucrative, but you're always trading those dollars for hours, right? At one point, you've got to make that choice, and you got to say, no, I'm not doing that anymore. In fact, I started raising my consulting rates so much because I was getting so much consulting business when I didn't actually want it, and I was like, well, I know you're going to pay me a lot of money, but I don't want to trade. I have to at some point cut this off and say, look, I'm not trading time. I'm not trading dollars for hours anymore. Instead, I'm spending like as much of my time as possible investing in my product business, investing in my company, so that I can do things that scale, that make money while I'm sleeping, right? So those are some of the complications, right? This is a very complicated topic. That's why I'm doing kind of a longer video on this. This is not a very quick answer type of thing. But anyway, I hope that gets you thinking. This is it's difficult. A lot of developers make the mistake, and so I'll wrap this up because we're going a little bit long here. But anyway, I want to just wrap it up by saying a couple of things here. So first of all, the big mistake that a lot of developers make, don't make this mistake, is thinking that when you become a freelancer and you can bill whatever, let's say, I think most people, if they could say, oh, if I could bill $200 an hour, that would be so awesome. I'd be free. Right? That's not the dream, right? I mean, that's good. It's good. Don't get me wrong. That's good, right? Especially, if you're working for someone and that's a good goal. But don't believe that that's the dream. You're still gonna have to get up. You're still gonna have to work. You're still gonna be not making money when you're not working. And eventually you're gonna get used to that level of income, and it's gonna, you know what I'm saying? You're gonna become comfortable. So don't think that that's the end. Don't think that's the end goal, right? I think that a product business, getting up to that level is where things start to really, so you should be aiming for that, right? The consulting, I think, is a step on that, because I don't know, maybe you love it, but I don't want to be doing consulting for 10 years. Like, I'd rather be building something that's going to make me money when I'm not working. So that's the first thing I would say. And then second, if you do get into consulting, it's fine, but just know that it's difficult to get out, right? It's difficult to transition to the product business once you get into consulting, because consulting itself is difficult. It takes time being a freelancer. You got to get a pipeline of clients. You got to deal with a lot of overhead. You might not have time to work on your product. You might have a lot more time working on your product working for someone else. Just keep your regular corporate job, work on your side project for 2 or 3 hours a day. It's going to be hard, right? But then you transition over, and then it's easier. Then you never have to do that real consulting. And then you can augment your product business with some consulting on the side, but you can bill a much higher rate because you don't need it, right? You can just turn stuff down that you don't like. You can just, you know what I mean? You can take it, it can be much more opportune. That's what I did. That really worked out for me. And I've seen other people doing other things and getting stuck in consulting and just, eventually going back to the regular job. And so anyway, Brian, oh boy, I hope that this has helped you and not confused you. I try to make this as simple as possible, but it is, honestly, there are some topics that are fairly complex and need some groundwork. So hopefully I've simplified the complexity of that. But if not, if you still have questions, leave a comment, email me at john@simpleprogrammer.com. I'd be happy to help you. I want to help you guys and gals to be able to do what you want to do, right? To be able to get out there and become an entrepreneur, or to hit your freelancing job, or to increase your hourly rate, whatever it is, whatever your goal is. I want to help you do that. So let me know how I can help you. All right, take care, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And if you find that this advice is useful and helpful, share it. Share it with someone else. Definitely trying to grow this YouTube audience here. So I'd appreciate it. Take care.